Hello and welcome. Today we're taking a look at a whole series of recent crime headlines coming out of Pakistan. We're going to go beyond the individual stories to try and see what they tell us about the much bigger picture.
So, what can a few months of headlines really tell us? Well, we're going to look at these reports not as just random, isolated incidents, but as pieces of a really complex puzzle. And when you put them all together, they cover a pretty startling spectrum of criminal activity.
For instance, you have stories that are just deeply personal and incredibly tragic.
Then you get the kind of stuff that's just unexpectedly brazen, involving people from what you might think are totally normal walks of life.
And then there's this, a total breakdown of public trust, where people feel like they have to take the law into their own hands. So let's start by looking at crimes happening in the one place that should be the safest, the home.
It's a tough thing to wrap your head around, but a huge number of the most violent crimes reported are starting from within the family. And these aren't random acts of violence. They're driven by things like disputes, revenge, and sometimes just the chilling desire for control. And what's really striking here is just how wide-ranging the relationships are. It's not limited to just one type of dispute. The reports list husbands, fathers, and uncles as the ones committing these acts, but also women and sons. It just goes to show how deeply these conflicts can tear apart the entire family unit.
And to put a human face on these numbers, one report gets into the story of a mother of 8 children who was killed by her husband. Just think about that for a second. 8 kids. It's such a stark reminder of the devastating generational impact this kind of violence has.
This quote, wow, it really highlights a tragic and recurring theme in these headlines. It's from a case where a man allegedly murdered his ex-wife. And the report suggests that her simple desire for independence might have been the trigger, a motive that unfortunately shows up again and again in stories where women are targeted.
Of course, this violence isn't just staying behind closed doors. It spills right out onto the streets, often in broad daylight, and it affects people from every walk of life.
And this is where it gets surprising. When you think of street crime, you think of career criminals, right? And sure, there are plenty of reports about organized gangs. But on the other hand, you've got an A-level student and a call center operator. It really suggests that this isn't an issue limited to one specific group. It's much more widespread. And the crucial point here is that nobody feels safe. The vulnerability of regular people is just laid bare in a story like this one. An 80-year-old woman targeted in the middle of the day for something as small as her earrings.
Okay, now listen to this observation. It comes from a report about a sacrificial goat heist. Yes, you heard that right. But what it says points to a much, much deeper problem. When criminals can act with that much confidence, with seemingly zero fear of getting caught, it signals a major breakdown in the system. And we'll get into that a bit more.
So, beyond the theft and the domestic disputes, there's an even darker pattern that emerges from these headlines. We're talking about crimes of assault and exploitation, and they are overwhelmingly targeting the most vulnerable people in society, women and children.
This heartbreaking pattern, it just appeared multiple times in the reports. A suspect will exploit someone's hope for a better life, a job for instance, and use it as a lure to trap them. This exact method was used to target both women and young boys, and often with absolutely horrific results.
I mean, just look at these headlines. They show the horrifying scale of this problem. It ranges from the ultimate betrayal, where a man actually helps facilitate an attack on his own wife, to organized criminal networks that produce and sell child pornography on the dark web. The evil on display here is just staggering.
So all of this leads us to the final and maybe the most crucial piece of this whole puzzle. With crime this widespread and this varied, what's going on with the system that's designed to stop it? Well, the headlines paint a picture of a law enforcement system that is clearly under an immense amount of strain.
This table just lays it out so clearly. You can draw a straight line from the systemic problem on the left to the tragic headline on the right. For example, when inaction is the challenge, the headline is a murder that might have been prevented. When public distrust is the issue, the result is mob justice. They're directly connected.
But it is so important to remember that this is not a one-sided story. Police officers aren't just facing scrutiny. They are on the front lines and are often victims themselves. We saw several headlines about officers being killed in the line of duty, a really somber reminder of the dangers that they face every single day.
So what's being done about all this? Well, the official response seems to be a big turn towards technology. We're seeing pushes for things like mandatory CCTV cameras and other modern tools, all in the hope of getting a handle on street crime and making the public feel safer.
So when you step back and look at the whole thing, what's the big takeaway? These headlines make it really clear that crime isn't just one problem. It's a complex web, where domestic violence, street crime, and a justice system under pressure are all deeply tangled up with each other, each one feeding into the next.
And that leaves us with one final question, one that goes way beyond any single headline. When crime is this widespread and trust in the system is this low, what does justice actually look like for the people it's supposed to protect?